ultra luxury. Obviously, if you start thinking about 20,000 a week for a vacation, it's the very tip of
Yeah.
the income sphere, pyramid on who can afford it. And I think most people think you have to spend that amount of money to have a familiar, comforting experience
Mhm.
because it's been proven through disappointment through, the OTA channels like Airbnb and Vrbo of these mixed reactions on, what are you going to get on the other side? And we think happiness is just really a function of expectations met. So you see something online and you get there and it meets those expectations, you're going to be happy. You're going to be very
Yeah.
disappointed when you show up there and there's four wine glasses and two are chipped and there's no steak knives and the bed sheets are all pilled and not comforting. And then it's like, well, the home may have reflected it, but the experience didn't.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Richer Geek Podcast. Today, we have Stephen Petasky. He's the CEO and founder of the Luxus Group. He's been CEO for 17 years. His team's facilitated over 20,000 yes, 20,000 people, amazing vacations and destinations all over North America, Central America, the Caribbean, and even Tuscany. The Luxus Group's now become a multidisciplinary company specializes in developing, managing, and servicing resort residential and hospitality, my favorite word, hospitality real estate assets with 3 offices globally and partnerships with luxury brands such as Four Seasons. Luxus has become one of the few companies in the world with this level of combined experience in the resort development, vacation rental, hospitality industry. We're going to learn all about some really neat stuff. How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing great, my man. How are you doing? What
Doing
an intro.
great.
Thanks,
Yeah,
man. Appreciate all that. Exciting.
absolutely. Yeah, we're trying to stay cool in Arizona February weather. It's going to be it's cold now. It's like 65. It's killing me. Uh, I know
Well, as a
half the nation's probably flipping me off right now, but you know,
Well, I know about cold that we just talked about in the
yeah,
pre-call, but from Canada originally, and that's cold. So I just moved to San Diego. Obviously, the weather's quite a bit milder here, so we've been enjoying that. But 44 years in Canada, we've been able to muscle through some cold temperatures for sure.
absolutely, absolutely. Now, talk to me a little bit about, before I get started, I'd love to get a little bit of a background.
Sure.
How did you get started in the real estate? Maybe it was something else, but then all of a sudden think about, you know what? I'm going to revolutionize this rental, this Airbnb. And what was that little light bulb in the head there?
Sure, absolutely. So I'll go back to '06, so 18 years ago. I'll give the quick summary and how it all started. And I was in a different career. My wife was in a different career, but we were pregnant with our boy. And at the time, all our friends were telling us like, "Oh, travel's gonna suck for you now. It's gonna be so hard. You can't take kids on planes. They cry the whole time, blah blah blah." And we're like,
Yeah.
"Well, is there an opportunity to still travel the way we want to travel?" And really, what as a new parent, especially or new family, is certainty was like an important aspect. So think of certainty as we talked about. You go to hotels, you know exactly what you're going to get, but it didn't really fit our space anymore. Having a baby in the hotel room just wasn't as much fun as maybe it could have been before. And then the Airbnb, well, Airbnb didn't exist in '06, '07. It's still this Verbo. And back then, as I'm sure everyone
Oh,
can attest to, it was horribly inconsistent. It's improved, but still has that inconsistency, which we'll hit on later. So we said, well, again, new parent, I really need the size, but I'm just concerned that if I get there and it's garbage or for whatever reason doesn't meet the expectations, it's going to take away that precious holiday time we have.
mhm.
I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we owned a whole bunch of homes, so we had variety, we had equity, we could get the capital appreciation, but we set them up similar to hotels, so you knew what to expect.
Hmm.
And it was the kickoff. It was really interesting because we didn't have much money, very very little, a couple hundred grand basically. Went to my folks and said, "Hey, I got this idea," and they'd had some second homes before. They're like, "I think it's a great idea." And okay, second couple hundred grand. Then we went to about 20 friends and family, and ultimately 16 signed up at roughly the same dollar amount. We raised $3.5 million in an LPGP relationship, and we were the managing partner. We syndicated this capital, and we went and bought 3 homes: one in Maui, one in Scottsdale, in True North, actually,
Hmm.
and then one in Western Canada as like a ski summer property. And for us, it was like if that's all it ever was, we would have been satisfied. We have beach, we have a golf property, and we have this ski summer. And we always envisioned it would maybe grow, but maybe over time we'd stay in our existing careers. But then all of a sudden, the word kind of got out, and those 18 people told 18, and it quickly expanded. And the big thing that people wanted was, the variety, the equity, but they wanted the certainty. That was the big thing. And we had the living's the same and the kitchen's the same, and as many things that people would know what they would get, whether it's a 5-bedroom home in Scottsdale or a 2-bedroom condo in Hawaii, they knew what to expect.
Yeah.
And over that first 7 years, 8 years, we ended up raising close to like $100 million. We had 450 LPs, bought all with cash with all the properties. And that's where those 20,000 vacations came from. So it wasn't meant to be purely a financial play. It was like more capital preservation. And I get this really special lifestyle perk associated with it. We left our careers and sold our business in that in 11. Then we went full time into this, and then since then we've had several evolutions. We got into the development space, working with Four Seasons and Marriott, and then the final evolutions, we'll talk about today is getting out of ownership of the homes and just focusing on this concept of hotel meets Airbnb. Hotel certainty with vacation homes. Instead of having 50 homes, which is what we had, we want to get to 500 homes and provide that certainty, which doesn't really exist in the market currently. So we're pretty excited to try to crack this code and solve this problem for clients.
So, let's talk about a little bit, you're kind of teaming up with Four Seasons. I've noticed back in the day, there used to be the vacation clubs.
Yes.
Part of Hilton, Marriott, that was kind of the thing. And they still have that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Marriott, Hilton, some of the higher end ones started getting it. It's like, hey, I want to compete with the short-term rentals.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have, I can go on Marriott.com or I can go on Hilton.com and actually look for luxury houses. How does that compare with what you're trying to do? Is it better, worse, more expensive, not as good? Talk to us a little bit about the different options and where you fit in.
Absolutely. It's a really, really good question. And all the podcasts I'm on, no one really knows that hospitality space like you do. So it's a great point. So take Marriott Homes and Villas, for example.
Yep.
Marriott's such a big company. So they can't start with, 50 homes or 100 homes. They need to start with 10,000. And so you probably know where they've had 3 iterations of kind of launch and failure of Marriott Homes and Villas. And the issue, the running issue with it is it's really just a slightly more curated version of Airbnb. So if I'm a Marriott Bonvoy member, and I'm not knocking it, I agree with their strategy, but if I'm a Marriott Bonvoy member and I'm used to staying at Marriott, at vacation clubs or their hotels, I know what certain standard to expect. I go to a Marriott Homes and Villas, I'm thinking it's going to be like a hotel. And you go there and it's really just Joe's home that he has, and Marriott has a few more checks and balances before it can be like approved, but it doesn't have the Marriott linens and the Marriott pillows and the Marriott robes and the Marriott bath and body wash. So they found that they were competing in that Airbnb, VRBO space. And I think this third iteration is starting to go okay, because I haven't heard, a ton. I haven't heard that they're going to shut it down or anything, but they're going to compete in that space, but they're always going to have an issue with not having this true branded experience within their portfolios. So part of our strategy is let's be a boutique version of that. And let's become where we do provide those hotel certainty aspects, same coffee pot, same amount of wine glasses, exactly what to expect. And it's such a huge sandbox, as you know, to play in. So our small 500 properties we're trying to target, but it could make a meaningful place. And maybe eventually a hotel wants to acquire us or something, because Marriott would have, Marriott consistent or Marriott branded residences that they know that the standard is consistent. They can have their loyalty program attached, and then they can have their brand standards attached, and so on and so forth. So that's just a bit of our idea. We can incubate this with several hundred properties and create this client base that is loyal to us because they just stayed at our Maui property and they had the best sleep they've ever had while on vacation. They're not going to go back to Airbnb. They'll say, oh, we'll go to their Phoenix property. Let's go to their Tuscany property. And we get a kind of a bigger chunk of that traveler pie.
Yeah.
And it all kind of stems from my original problem in my, I guess, demands when I travel. My vacation time with my family is very precious. I don't need ultra luxury. I just want to know what I'm going to get. That's the number one thing. And if I don't want to stay in a hotel for that particular vacation, you really got to do a lot of research on Airbnb or Vrbo on 5-star ratings, guest stays, what are guests saying. And we just solve that. You don't have to do any research. If you book through Luxus, you know what the standards are going to be. And so that's how we would differ from it. And then ideally we could create a scalable approach that it could become a company that has thousands of properties. But we have, our milestones and goals the next 5 years. And we want to grow methodically and intentionally and not too fast. So we turn down 9 out of 10 homes that come our way because we need to make sure A, it's a home's a fit. And then B is that the homeowner is on board with making that investment into their property to bring it to the brand standard that's required. That's called the Luxus brand standard. So, and that's where we're growing. So, any listeners that have a vacation home that they're renting currently and they're with maybe doing it themselves or a local property manager, we'd love to have the opportunity to have a look at the property, see if it's a fit, because we can apply our brand standard. And ideally, our goal is create more revenue for you, simply because you're going to get a lot more repeat bookings and people coming back to your home. So that's the mission we're trying to accomplish. And a couple companies have tried in the vacation like club space, but they're more like Sonder on like the apartment rentals and the homes.
Vacasa,
Because that's a good example quickly on that.
yeah.
Is they're the full service property management company. So they're Airbnb combined with management, but you probably just saw they're being sold. They had I think up to a 1.5 or $2 billion market cap, and they just went under contract for 120 million to Casago. And the reason why they grew too fast, they bought a lot of small mom and pop shops and they just weren't delivering the service on the ground. So both for a homeowner and a guest experience. So their concept was similar from fully vertically integrated management, but no brand standard. So we're trying to come up the middle with our own boutique version. And so far the response has been tremendous as people in the first 6 months of booking are being like, oh my gosh, I'm now a Luxus loyal client. Give me more properties and more options to travel to. So we're in heavy growth mode right now.
Yeah. Well, it's good to see Casago's just getting out of Rocky Point and expanding.
I never followed them that much until seeing the merger/acquisition, and now I'm following it closely, and it's quite interesting.
Yeah. Well, he's been on the founder of Casago's been on our podcast, and we've done
amazing.
some things with them, and yeah, he's a fascinating story too. But so,
sure.
Your goal, like when you do with Four Seasons, are you doing more of a home and villa thing, or are you doing the high rise, the 150 key kind of, it looks like the hotel, looks like a Ritz, but they're individual rentals. What is your space with them?
Sure. Yeah, thank you for that. So with Four Seasons, they've obviously, like with several of the luxury brands, Ritz and Montage and such, they were generally to start all hotels. And then over the last 20 years, they have their hotel and their residences combined. And so it's a very good formula because you sell off the real estate. You have all this rental real estate that they have to rent through your program, but it basically pays for the hotel component. So your baseline on your 100 keys, so hotel rooms are almost paid for. So it's a great financial model. The problem they were seeing and the problem they wanted to resolve is they're finding that if I'm a homeowner living in Four Seasons, Costa Rica, for example, I'm sharing the pool with the person spending $1,000 a night. And it's not like it's such a bad thing, but this is, people are spending $10 million for these places. They want a place they can actually live and not be competing with hotel guests. So about, I'd say 4 or 5 years ago, I could be off a bit on the time, Four Seasons came up with the concept of standalone private residential. So effectively, it's purely a residential thing. Some allow rentals, like 7 or 30-day rentals. In our case, in our Four Seasons Las Vegas project, it's 90-day rentals. But it's purely a condo. As our role is we build it out, 171 units. So it's the largest Four Seasons project in the world right now from the residential side.
Wow.
We're at 620 million in pre-sales, and pre-sales have been going phenomenally well. A lot come from Four Seasons, the local market, other markets. And the concept there is that I love the concept of what Four Seasons does on providing this certainty and this wonderful experience. I can do it in a place that I can actually live, and everyone at the pool are my neighbors. It's not a bunch of transient hotel guests. And now Four Seasons is really excited about it, and they've got a lot of projects around the world. You're going to see a lot more pop up where you have a city like Las Vegas, they have a hotel on the strip, and they got a residential community off the strip. And you'll see it in more and more markets where they're not combined with the hotel. So we're kind of, I would say, riding that tailwind with them, and they've been wonderful, amazing to deal with, and we try to be good partners to them, and looking at other projects as well that we can create this residential community. And our real role is we don't retain anything. It's we build it out, we sell it, and then we move on to the next project.
Yeah, that's very cool. What would you say? When I was kind of laughing and not laughing when you're saying You go to the Four Seasons, you go to these things, and everyone wants it to be the same. Everyone wants
Yeah,
to know what they're getting. And I'm thinking it's like, yeah, I'm going through a PIP right now, to make sure that my Wyndham looks exactly like all the other Wind gates in the nation. I'm like,
sure.
even though there's nothing wrong with my blue couches, they all need to be red now. You
Yeah.
know, it's like, but there's that people want to know wherever they go in the world or in the United States, they want that comfort everywhere I walk into, and it's this brand, it's this type of accommodation. It's comforting because, yep, lobby's there, the breakfast is there, my room looks like this,
Hmm.
and there's consistency. What would you say the difference between the different levels of the Airbnb? I mean,
Hmm.
Four Seasons is luxury. We
Yeah.
all know
Yes.
that. You have the Four Seasons, you have the Ritz
Top of it.
Carltons. You have those tiers. Um, what does it mean to be luxury? I can have $1 million house and put granite in, and
Hmm.
it might be luxury. But what is
It,
that? What does that
it's
mean?
a, it's a good question because we've always, so our company, the Luxus Group, Luxus is the Latin word for luxury. So, but luxury is kind of a relative word. And I think the best way I could define it, which I think is commonly used in the industry now, you have accessible luxury, which would be like a really nice two-bedroom condo in Hawaii that's fit and finished, perfect. It's got granite countertops, it's got nice couches, beautiful electronics. That would be like, and maybe it rents for $700 a night. So let's call it accessible luxury.
Mhm.
Then you have luxury, which would be, maybe your $1 million to $4 million properties in that space, renting for 1,000 to 2,000 bucks a night in that space, and that's would be kind of most common. And then you have ultra luxury,
Yeah.
and that's where you get into like Four Seasons residences and these ultra luxury homes that are 3,000 to 4,000 plus a night to 10 to 20,000 a night, whatever it could be. Now, those are slightly moving goalposts, but that's the best way I could define it. And we kind of live in the accessible luxury to luxury space. So it's a little bit more wide ranging for the type of consumer that can enjoy our product.
Yeah.
Ultra luxury, obviously, if you start thinking about 20,000 a week for vacation, it's the very tip of
Yeah.
the income sphere, pyramid on who can afford it. And I think most people think you have to spend that amount of money to have a familiar, comforting experience
Mhm.
because it's been proven through disappointment through the OTA channels like Airbnb and Vrbo of these mixed reactions on what are you going to get on the other side. And we think happiness is just really a function of expectations met. So if you see something online and you get there and it meets those expectations, you're going to be happy. You're going to be very
Yeah.
disappointed when you show up there and there's 4 wine glasses and two are chipped and there's no steak knives and the bed sheets are all pilled and not comforting. And then it's like, well, the home may have reflected it, but the experience didn't. So that's what
Yeah.
we're trying to resolve within that kind of that luxury space.
Let's talk about regulations a little bit. There's
Sure.
a lot of neighborhoods, there's a lot of cities, townspeople that are fighting back because there might be 5 Airbnbs on their block.
Yeah.
They mean, it's getting crazy. I'm seeing it, in Scottsdale because it's like every other home seems like is a rental. Um, how are you handling, and what are you seeing as the impact so far of the regulations, and how are they and you changing on how to conform within those regulations?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's a big part of our thesis of the kind of business model for the next 5 years. And if you give lots of examples in America, but also in Europe about where regulations have, significantly decreased supply in certain markets, but then as a
Yeah.
result, the people that have legal STR permits, their revenues went through the roof. So as supply comes off. So what we're seeing is knowing that this exists, and we had this in our previous model. We were in New York with a few units. We got effectively kicked out, asked to leave politely from the buildings because we were running them, even though they were equity holders, it was still a transient use. And it's really hard when we have a transient use behavior in an apartment and the neighbor, to your point, is
Yeah.
living there going to work at 7 o'clock in the morning. So New York was the first major city in the US to implement, various stages of very strict, Airbnb laws, you call them, I guess. What we're looking at now is say, okay, market by market, where can we be in that we see how this evolution is going to look like? So I'll use Las Vegas as a good example. Las Vegas just went through a process. There was 22,000 illegal Airbnbs. Obviously, the hotels on the strip do not like that. It's a high
Yeah.
competition for their product. So the hotel lobby is extremely strong in Las Vegas. They say, hey, Vegas / Clark County, you need to figure this out because this is not fair for us. So Vegas or Clark County, the surrounding cities, went through and did a lottery for about 2,000 legal Airbnb units. And they had a number of rules around it. It would be like no Airbnb within 100 yards. I'm making this up, but like you can't have 10 on the street and the whole street's like a hotel, basically. Yeah. And then your people, you had to have a property manager, a 24-hour hotline if there was an issue, like all these various aspects. So they went through this process, and there's two phases to this. One is regulation. So when we're looking in Las Vegas, I'm only going to be taking homes that are going to be getting a legal short-term rental permit, because even though they've done this lottery, and I think only 1,000 people are able to comply and ultimately like meet the standards, there's still, my guess is 20,000 illegal Airbnbs in Las Vegas. Then it shifts to enforcement. And enforcement's been interesting seeing different parts around the world. Some are very good at it and some are very bad at it. I think Vegas will be good at it. It's going to take them probably a few years. How do I make it illegal? How do I enforce that person? And giving them a $200 fine isn't going to cut it. They'll just take a $200 fine, and just keep renting at $1,000 a night. Yeah. But eventually, like Barcelona went through this. Yeah. Making that, they went through like you know what type of Barcelona, but they went through some very extreme fines. And now the however many permits, 8,000 legal permits in Barcelona, that's all there's ever going to be. And when you trade your home with that permit, it actually creates a value for the potential buyer, knowing that is grandfathered into the new arrangement. So for us, we watch each market Maui's like the next big one right now. They're in a really heated debate talking about cutting 6,000 Airbnbs. So we're only taking on properties there that are fully exempt for short-term rental. And then once it all flushes out with them, hopefully this summer, it's been going on for a long time since basically since the fires and when things got really, difficult over there. And I don't blame them to go. They need regulation there, frankly. Once we know where that's at, we'll see if we expand into other parts of Maui. So it's kind of our job, when a client comes to us to look at their property, are you an exempt area? Or are you in an area that's at risk? If it's at risk, we probably won't take it on. If it's exempt, we would take it on subject to everything else. And then our goal is, or our thought is, in the next 5 years, these cities that do the regulation, start to enforce it properly, the value of our properties and the value of our revenue streams for those clients are going to shoot through the roof, because you're going to have just less supply, but presumably no change in demand, people wanting to still travel this way.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, let's talk about it's kind of like the evolution bit. People do fix and flips, then they do short-term rentals, then maybe multifamily. So there's probably a lot of our listeners right now that have Airbnbs or VRBs, short STRs. Yeah. And, I've talked about my evolution of managing hotels or multifamily myself. And then it's like, why am I doing this? And I'm not very good at it. I'm good at finding things, not managing things. What is the kind of the trap that people get into about self-managing Airbnbs? And then why it's important to have someone like your company to sit there. It's like, look, if it's a nice enough property, it's so worth it to have us do it. And who cares about that 8%, 10% or whatever it is? You're going to be more efficient, make more money by having someone that's a professional do it, right?
Yeah, it's a really good point. There's really three ways that someone has an Airbnb they can do it. They can DIY it and do it themselves. They can hire a local property management company like ScottsdaleRentals.com, or whatever it might be. And usually they're mom and pop shops. Some are really quite sophisticated and experienced. Some are new startups and they got time to sort things out. Or you go with a company like ours, and there's kind of two phases: a small boutique international company like ours, or the larger versions like the Vacases of the world, which we talked about. There hasn't been a lot of success with the really big guys because it's just getting very far removed from the client. Not to say that they won't find their way with the Vacases of the world down the road, but it's been like I sign up with them on one of 25,000 listings. It's really hard to feel like you're special in that machine. Yeah. So I think the trap was, to go back to the original question, the trap happened right after COVID. All this artificial bump in the revenues went through the roof. Everyone's like, I'm going to buy Airbnbs. This is going to be great. And 21 through 23 were these massively artificially inflated revenue streams that have all now reset. And now people are sitting with these Airbnbs. Maybe they did it themselves. Maybe it's a local, PMC or property management company. And now they're like, what do I do with them? And I've talked to a lot of clients that are just like selling because they think there's no hope because well, the reality is the difference where we can add value. And we're not the only one, certainly, but I'd say one of few is assume property management is the same. We can do as good a job as a local property manager. We have great boots on the ground. Your property will be well looked after. It comes down to that point, to the sophistication and attention that goes into the revenue distribution. So
Mhm.
everything, we have our direct booking site. You can book direct, but we also use Airbnb and Vrbo because that's a massive influx of traffic to our properties.
Yep.
For them, it's all about visibility. How do I get to be on the first page? And there's just a series of hundreds of algorithms to have to understand, which I frankly don't really understand them, but I'm
Yeah.
learning. But we have an amazing company that is the ultimate hacker of this, and this is our outsourced partner or company that we work with. We just got off the call with them right before this podcast, actually. And every week, I just amazed with how their mission is to understand those algorithms. It's everything from what's the picture that shows up, on the first photo. Everyone thinks it's just 5-star ratings. It's definitely an important aspect of it, but there's layers upon layers of algorithm support. If you are a property management company and you put your phone number into the chat box with the Airbnb client, the algorithm will punish you, because they're thinking you're trying to steal the client for a direct booking. So we're saying we work with Airbnb Vrbo. They're going to be very important for us in our growth. We want to bring a lot of business. We love direct bookings too. But if we can understand these, and then we can generate, maybe your property in Phoenix that is with the local company probably doesn't have access to these resources because it's millions of dollars and a lot of capital to kind of get to it. But if we can hack these and your property now stands out on those channels, you're going to get a disproportionate return compared to the market. And for us, we're seeing anywhere from 10 to 40% more revenue than the do-it-themselfers. So for us, our fees are anywhere from 20 to 30% for all the management, all the on the ground support, everything. You just get a check every month. But if we can, at minimum, make that up and generally do a lot better, it could be as high as 50, 60% more, then I'm a pretty happy client. I get to keep my property, use it when I want to use it, and I can ultimately, hopefully, generate better returns than I was getting through the other two options.
So if someone's interested in having your company manage theirs, two questions. What is the level of sophistication, or how nice does that house have to be?
Mm-hmm.
Your requirements, don't give me this, it needs to be this.
Yeah.
And what is your website, and how can they learn more about how to have your company manage it?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So for our general sweet spot would be homes in the 800 grand to 5 million range. So it's a pretty big range. I would say that anything below that price point, and I would say it's relative. 800 grand to a million, you can get a pretty good place in the desert. It doesn't get you anything in Maui, as an example. So kind of relative to market. So, but that's a good price range. We do have more premium $6 to $10 million properties as well. So some on the ultra luxury side, and we have a space for that. So that would be number one. If you have a home in that space, we'd love a chance to have a conversation about it. And the best tool is luxusvp.com. So luxusvacationproperties.com.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a section for homeowners and a form to fill out. And then if anyone's listening, can even just DM me directly on Instagram, Stephen Petasky. I don't post a lot of stuff about the company on there, but listeners are on there. You can DM directly and I can get to the right channels to make sure we have a good look at their home. And yeah, we're looking to grow with awesome partners, and we want to do very well by them. We've been homeowners ourselves. We've built or managed over 100 luxury properties, so we understand what it takes, and we want to make sure you're a happy homeowner, not just on what you get for revenue every month, but you feel when you show up to your home, it feels still like your home, and not just a transient, beat up rental property.
Yeah. Well, because that's one of the things. It's like, we have a couple really nice homes. It's like, what, we don't use them that much, but I just don't want to get them beat up.
Yeah. So that's for us, is like we have homeowners that, first off, we take very good care of the homes. We have appropriate budgets to make sure that, the nicks are fixed on the walls when when someone's dragging their suitcase through or whatever. We go so far as have homeowner lock-offs where they have their own linens, their own family pictures, where they show up to their home, we put their family pictures back up, we put their linens on the bed, and it almost will not even know that this home had maybe just rented for the last 3 months on a transient basis. That's part of our mission, because we want homeowners to feel good that to rent with us, because if they show up and it's beat up and the pantry's a mess and there's broken wine glasses, and they'll just be frustrated, and if they'll just leave. So we're trying to make sure that that's a big part of our mission. The homeowners are happy.
Well, everybody, if you're interested, if you have an Airbnb, and who doesn't want to stay at a very luxury? Is it built yet in Vegas, or are you selling now?
We're selling now. So yeah, if you're in the space, want to buy an awesome luxury condo, you go to the Four Seasons private residences or hit me up to the other channels. We'll make sure you get the front row tour of it. But it's pretty special. And we have Tuscany coming up next with a really exciting project there. So if you're a fan of Tuscany, and we do some syndications. I know your audience is big into
Yeah.
syndications. Generally, it's through a pretty tight network we have, but we're always open to new relationships. So there's opportunities to collaborate on a few different levels.
Well, there you go. Stephen Petasky, CEO of Luxus Group. Thank you so much for coming on the Richer Geek Podcast. I wish you best of luck on your endeavors, and maybe we'll see each other in Europe sometime.
Phoenix to start, and then Europe and next time for sure. Exactly. Thanks, Mike. That was a great
There you go.
conversation. I appreciate it.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.